It was Alex, the original guy that owned the Bugatti in the first place and crashed it after he got paid out from insurance. Today, we're gonna drive the Bugatti Chiron for the first time since the accident.
$1.20. That is the cost of the part that was broken in a Bugatti, worth over £1 million. $1.20. A Volkswagen switch, available from the same parts bin that supplies your Golf, your Polo, your Passat, and Bugatti had quoted $15,500 to fix it by replacing the entire door assembly. Matt Armstrong did not discover this story. What he did to a $6 million Bugatti Chiron per sport made it impossible for the car world to ignore it any longer. And now wealthy Bugatti buyers are asking a question they never asked before. What else in my car is a Volkswagen part with a Bugatti invoice? To understand why this story has hit so hard, why it has landed differently from every other supercar pricing story before it, you have to understand the specific nature of what Matt Armstrong exposed when he started stripping down that Chiron per sport in Miami. He was not looking for shared components. He was not running an investigation into Volkswagen Group parts sharing practices. He was looking for airbags because the car's airbags had deployed in the crash, and he needed replacements. And when he looked up the part numbers on the Chiron's neat airbags and front passenger airbag, what he found stopped him cold. The part numbers were identical, not similar, not broadly compatible, identical. The airbags in a $6 million Bugatti Chiron per sport, one of 60 ever built, a car priced from $3.6 million new, a car that Bugatti CEO Mate Rimac had gone on Instagram to describe as an engineering masterpiece too complex for any independent mechanic to safely work on, share exact part numbers with the airbags in an Audi A3. An Audi A3, a car you can buy new for under $30,000. And the airbags themselves, sourced independently, cost less than $50 each. It did not end there. The steering wheel airbag, same part as an Aston Martin DB11, not a shared platform partner, not another VW Group brand, a completely separate manufacturer from a completely separate corporate family. The same component, available in the parts catalog of a car, that costs a fraction of the Bugatti and is made by a company that has no connection to Motium. The video in which Armstrong made these discoveries pulled 6.8 million views in 4 days. And the reason it hit that hard is not because part sharing between manufacturers is unusual. It is because of what those parts cost when sold as Bugatti components, versus what they cost when the Bugatti badge was not attached to the invoice. Now, let us talk about Volkswagen. Because to fully grasp what this story is actually about, you need to understand what Volkswagen Group means in practice, and what it has meant for Bugatti specifically since 1998. That is the year Volkswagen acquired the rights to the Bugatti mark. Ferdinand Piëch, then chairman of Volkswagen Group, wanted a flagship. He wanted something that would prove, beyond any technical doubt, that Volkswagen's engineering could produce the greatest car in the world, and he committed the resources to do it. The Veyron was described officially as designed and developed by the Volkswagen Group, not Bugatti's engineers in Alsace working in splendid isolation, but the combined engineering might of a corporation that also made the Golf and the Polo and the Passat. That context matters. Today, Volkswagen Group owns Bugatti alongside Audi, Lamborghini, Porsche, Bentley, Seat, Skoda, and its own core VW brand. The corporate architecture means that components, platforms, electronics, and technologies flow between these brands constantly. It is efficient. It is economically rational. It is, frankly, how the automotive industry works at scale. A Ferrari uses components sourced from external suppliers. A Rolls-Royce shares electronic architecture with BMW. A Lamborghini shares platform DNA with Audi. Part sharing is not a scandal. It is manufacturing reality. What Bugatti does with those shared components, the calibration, the integration, the specific engineering validation for their application, is genuinely different from dropping an Audi part into a production line unchanged and calling it done. Mate Rimac made exactly this point in his response to Armstrong. He is not wrong. But here is where the story diverges from the general defense of part sharing. Because it is one thing to say that a component source from the VW Group parts bin has been validated and integrated and tested for a specific application in a Bugatti at significant cost and engineering effort. It is a very different thing to say that a $1.20 Volkswagen Switch should cost $15,500 to fix when it fails. And that is a story that existed before Matt Armstrong ever opened a Chiron's door. Sitting quietly in the experience of one owner, waiting for the context that Armstrong's project would eventually provide, Carl Hartley, you may know the name. He co-hosts the Cars and Money podcast with Rob Moore, the same show on which Matt Armstrong discusses legal concerns about Bugatti's response to the Chiron project. Hartley runs Tom Hartley Cars, one of the most respected high-end exotic dealerships in the United Kingdom. He is, by any measure, deeply embedded in the world of ultra-luxury automotive ownership and trade. And he owned a Bugatti Veyron. And when the mirror switch on that Veyron developed a fault, he called Bugatti, and they told him the repair would cost $15,500. Not because the switch itself was expensive, because Bugatti's official repair procedure required replacing the entire door assembly to address the fault. The switch was not identified as a serviceable item. The door assembly was a unit of service. $15,500. Hartley, through his network, found a friend with a background in Formula One component knowledge. That friend looked at the fault, identified the failing part, and traced it to a Volkswagen Switch, available through normal VW parts channels. Cost, $1.20. Time to replace, 20 minutes. Total repair costs, including parts sourcing, approximately $20. $15,500. Down to $20. Because someone asked whether the problem was actually the $1.20 Volkswagen Switch before accepting that the door assembly needed replacing. Now compound that with another story from the same world. A Bugatti Veyron owner received a repair quote for a boost pressure sensor, a component that monitors turbocharger pressure in the W16 engine. Bugatti's quote for the part, not thousands. The sensor itself, when traced to its origin in the Volkswagen Group parts network, turned out to be shared with the VW Golf GTI. Price of the sensor, €16.50. $19. The Bugatti labor charge to install it, €1,600. $1,800. For a sensor that costs $19. In a Golf. And a Veyron fuel tank replacement, quoted at €17,904 for the part, with installation adding another €20,000 on top. €38,000 to address a fuel tank in a car where the boost pressure sensor is a Golf GTI part that costs €19. These stories were known. They existed in the ownership community. They circulated in the forums and the private conversations of people who had experienced them. But they circulated quietly in spaces that the broader public did not occupy, discussed between owners who had the financial resources to absorb the costs and the social context to treat them as the price of exclusivity rather than as an exposure of something fundamentally wrong. They were not secret. They were simply invisible. Invisible in a way that expensive things stay invisible when the people paying for them have no reason to question the bill and no public audience forcing the question. And then Matt Armstrong pointed camera at a part number. And the question became very public very fast. Mate Rimac responded. Of course he did. 6.8 million views in 4 days demanded a response. And Rimac's defense of the shared parts criticism was, in some important ways, genuinely compelling. He walked through what it actually means to use a shared component in a Bugatti. He described cold weather testing of the Tourbillon, Bugatti's new model, at minus 20 degrees Celsius, where the team discovered that the leather dashboard upholstery could stiffen enough to interfere with airbag deployment. And Bugatti, he explained, had to change the way the leather was processed during production, weakening it in specific places, to ensure the airbag could deploy correctly at that temperature. A shared airbag, a standard VW Group component. But to make it work safely in a Bugatti with a leather dashboard in a Finnish winter, months of testing and production process change were required. This is real engineering work. It costs real money. And spread across the 50 or 500 units of each Bugatti model, that engineering cost per car is genuinely significant in a way that it would not be for a manufacturer building 50,000 units a year. Rimac's point was not dishonest when he said the airbags were not simply interchangeable, that putting an Audi A3 airbag into a Chiron without Bugatti's integration and testing knowledge introduced safety risk. There was genuine substance to the argument. The cold weather leather story is not invented. The cost of homologating even a shared component across production run of just 500 cars is not trivial. But here's where Rimaac's defense, however technically valid in parts, runs into the wall that Matt Armstrong's project has built. Because the argument that Bugatti's engineering justifies the price differential between their components and the source